Do you take responsibility for failing to stop this fraud in your state?
Well, certainly I take responsibility for putting people in jail. Governors don't get to just talk theoretically. We have to solve problems. And I will note, it's not just Somalis. Minnesota is a generous state. Minnesota is a prosperous state, a well-run state. We're AAA bond rated, but that attracts criminals.
Of course people steal from us. We're Minnesota nice. That's what he didn't add. The buck, of course, doesn't stop with Tim Walz, never does, or the $1 billion scammed under his nose. NewsNation was on this story. The moment it broke last week, a report on a massive fraud scheme uncovered in Minnesota found money intended for social services siphoned indirectly into the pockets of Somali terrorists, a group known as al-Shabab, affiliated with al-Qaeda. Somali immigrants in Minnesota have reportedly been abusing systems meant to help the most unfortunate, the homeless, food programs, even programs to fund autism. And now Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says his department is joining the investigation. In my direction, U.S. Treasury is investigating allegations that under the feckless mismanagement of the Biden administration and Governor Tim Walz, hardworking Minnesotans' tax dollars may have been diverted to the terrorist organization al-Shabab. Super panel, Shelby Talcott, Semaphore politics reporter Reagan, Reese, White House correspondent for the Daily Caller, Laurie, Watkins, Democratic strategist and former Obama policy advisor. Laurie, I feel like there's many in the Democratic Party who do not wish Tim Walz ill. They just wish him gone. Is that fair?
So in this case, it's about accountability, not necessarily abandonment, Leland. But that response to Kristen Welker was not the one that I would have helped prepare as a staffer for the governor. But I will say that as soon as they found out about this, made referrals, worked with the Department of Justice on trying to find the right people and to prosecute them accordingly.
That would have been the answer you would have suggested?
Well, something along those lines, not, you know, we're nice and we attract a lot of people to come here and do harm by us. That wasn't the best, no.
And he seems to have an inability to say that things are a problem and wrong and to criticize the Somali community, which makes sense because it's a big Democratic constituency. Here he is when asked if this is a Minnesota problem or a problem with the Somalis. Take a listen.
To demonize an entire community on the actions of a few, it's lazy. That is totally disconnected with demonizing an entire group of people who came here fleeing civil war and created a vibrant community that makes Minnesota and this country better.
The White House, Shelby, I think, realizes that this is exactly the kind of thing that they have been talking about when it comes to immigration, and now they have a perfect real-world example.
Yes, this is really the trifecta, and it reminds me actually of President Trump on the campaign trail, because oftentimes he would kind of find stories like this and latch onto them because it is the perfect storm, right? It is about immigration. It is about a Democratic-run area. It is about funds being misused. It is about people not getting what they should be getting. And it's so it's the perfect storm, and especially now when you have a president who is being criticized on things like the economy, he has found something to go back to. This is a winning message for Trump that he has gone back to time and time again.
And to be fair, there was one of these charities called Feeding Our Future that grew faster than NVIDIA did. And no one seemed to wonder why it went from 2 million to 200 million, and conceivably no additional people were homeless or hungry in Minnesota. This, Shelby, is your point sort of in action. Donald Trump going after Tim Walz.
Do you stand by that claim of calling Tim Walz retarded?
Yeah, I think there's something wrong with him. Absolutely, sure.
You don't think
You have a problem with him? You know what? I think there's something wrong with him. Anybody that would do what he did, anybody that would allow those people into his state and pay billions of dollars out to Somalia. We give billions of dollars to Somalia. It's not even a country because it doesn't function like a country.
There's not much he said in that statement, Reagan, that is untrue.
I think Shelby really hit the nail on the head. I think it's a perfect issue for the Trump administration to latch on to, and I think it's a perfect person for the Trump administration to latch on to. Tim Walz, the guy they defeated in the 2024 election, who they really exposed to not be a great leader for Democrats. It's someone Democrats absolutely do not want to be the face of their party. And now they get to tie this story, this scandal, onto Tim Walz, onto the Democrats, and really use it to propel them into the 2026 midterms. And they're looking for things that they can do to propel them into 2026 midterms. I think they're almost desperate in a way to find something to, you know, strengthen the GOP and unite them.
Can I just add in one thing here? But make sure that there's no ramifications or consequences that come from that. And we saw that when Donald Trump referred to Tim Walz and used the R word, because I won't repeat that here, that then you had Michael Buhasek from Indiana, a Republican lawmaker, say, actually, because of the rhetoric and words that you have used, not for the first time, but the second and third time, referring to people with developmental disabilities, and I have a daughter who has Down syndrome, that I'm not going to support this anymore. So that was, Leland, a consequence that came out of a Republican legislature earlier this week because of those comments by Trump. So I think he should mind
I think
his
that's
rhetoric.
the first time. Was it Tim? What's the guy's name in Indiana?
Buhasek.
Buhasek?
Yeah.
I think that's the first time his name has ever been mentioned on cable news is this week. Yes, you heard it here. You heard it here first. And Shelby, the fact that you now have Bessent in the Treasury Department going after it, that proves this is going to have a very long tail.
Yeah, this is serious, right? As Secretary Bessent said. And I also think that this administration in particular, when there's something like this that Donald Trump is really interested in, and I'm not saying that the issue is illegitimate. In fact, it seems like there is a very big scandal here. There's some problem. But you have a team around Donald Trump who jumps very quickly to make sure that things keep moving, to make sure that things move forward in a way that Trump wants them to move forward. You've seen it with the DOJ. You've seen it with the FBI. You're seeing it with Secretary Bessent in this situation.
Reagan, we've seen so often the laws of politics be ignored, right? When your enemy is self-imploding, as Tim Walz is, get out of the way, don't get in front.
Yep.
By the rhetoric, specifically using the word that he used, which is one that I won't use, does it turn what is sort of a pure as a driven snow story for Republicans of Somali immigrants sending billions back to al-Shabab into just another Washington food fight?
I'll be so honest, I actually didn't know the full scope of this story because the headlines that had been, I think, overpowering the Minnesota scandal has been President Trump using the R word. And so when I was...
As if that's the more important thing than $1 billion being scammed to a terrorist organization.
Yes.
But yes.
So I think that makes your point exactly. I think that it has gotten in the way in some cases as President Trump and his administration being able to capitalize on this and use this to their advantage. That's kind of the price you pay when you have such a dynamic, free-speaking president like President Trump. I think we can debate whether he should have used that word or not, and those conversations should absolutely be had. But I do think that it could overshadow a bit. But
no, it gives media that wants to cover the story a way to cover it and not about the $1 billion. Ladies, as always, fantastic. Thank you all.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.